This next panel is on designing for context. And to moderate today's panel, we have John Long from iStrategy Labs.
Hey guys, as has been said, my name is John Long. I work for iStrategy Labs. I manage the engineering team there. I'm very proud to be able to bring you guys this roster of speakers. As has been stated, we're going to talk about designing for context. Kind of what that means is that I think it's fairly evident now that the nature of digital design and digital services is shifting to the point where we can't necessarily plan for one single platform, one single experience, one single delivery system right out of the gate. So we need to learn how to be flexible. We need to know what to look for. And these three folks up here all have experience in doing that. And so I'm not going to stand up here and take too much of their time. I'd like to have them tell you what they do. So in between each one, I'll introduce each person, and then we'll just get this started. So up first, we have Allyson Kapin from the RAD campaign, the founder of the RAD campaign, and Women Who Tech. So she is going to be talking about social change anytime, everywhere. So Allyson, if you want to roll up here, you are good to go. And that guy's good for you too, so you got your choice.
Great. Which one do you want me to do? I don't think it's changing.
There you go. You should just be able to tap through.
No, yep, there we go. All right. So thanks for having me, everybody. So my topic today is designing for social change anytime, everywhere, and it's based on a book that I've co-authored with Amy Sample Ward. It's coming out in February. So in the nonprofit space, your supporters and activists are superheroes, and that's actually the world that I come from, fighting for social change. And they really want to make a difference in this world to make it a better place, whether that is donating money or supplies to the Hurricane Sandy relief organizations like the American Red Cross, or signing a petition for a pedestrian-friendly street in DC for bikers, walkers, and skateboarders in our community. So how can organizations help superheroes save the world? What can they do? What is their ultimate goal? So we want to be able to reach them wherever they are. That is designing and developing multi-channel campaigns that give people the opportunity to take action wherever they are, checking out a website, on a desktop computer, waiting for coffee at one of our favorite coffee places, Filter, checking email on their smartphones. How many are fans of Filter? Great. Or en route to a new city or business for pleasure and checking email, social media on tablets and laptops and smartphones. Or what about waiting at a bus stop? You're meeting for a friend for dinner, and you see this provocative billboard by the American Red Cross with a QR code that you are prompted to scan, and you're able to donate money to earthquake victims. So I also think it's important that when we're selling multi-channel campaigns to your boss, you really need good data to back that up so that they are going to want to help you make that investment in multi-channel campaigns. So here's some mobile facts that I think everybody needs to know. There are at least 5.2 billion mobile accounts worldwide today, and 1 in 2 mobile US subscribers own a smartphone. About 88% of Americans use a mobile phone. And in terms of social media traffic, 50% of traffic is via mobile on Twitter, and in Facebook, it's about 33%, which is a little surprising because it's the largest social network and the #2 traffic site on the web. So, but it is actually growing every month. Other mobile facts that I think is interesting for you all to know, if you can, actually, on the next slide, is in terms of mobile adoption. So between 18 to 54, the majority of the population is mobile users, and that starts going down ages 55 to 65 and older, with about between 30% and 16% of the population. The top 5 mobile apps are Facebook, YouTube, Android Market, Google Search, and Gmail. Probably no big surprises there. And then in terms of mobile email and text-to-give stats, 20% of emails are opened via a mobile device. And what's also interesting is that only 3% of emails opened via mobile were later opened on a desktop computer. So when we are trying to get our constituents to take action, to donate money, or whatever action, if you're in a business that you want them to take buying a product, it's really important to remember that the majority of people who are checking your email on smartphones are actually not coming back later to take some sort of an action and check that email again. 9% of mobile phone users have texted to donate, and another interesting stat is that out of all of those people who have donated via mobile, 79% have donated via other channels, such as through email, a website, or direct mail. Some other interesting facts. There was a survey done by the Pew Foundation. They were actually analyzing Haiti text donors to the national average. And here are some just interesting stats that I wanted to point out. In terms of the Haiti text donors, 97% use the internet compared to the national average of 78%. They also use social networking sites at about 83% compared to the national average, which is 64%. In terms of making a donation to charity online, 59% of users. And then according to the national average, that's only 25%. Also thought it was really interesting in terms of cell phone users. They take a picture. The people who donated through the Haiti campaign at 96% versus 73% of the national average. And also in terms of recording video, Haiti texters took video with their cell phones at 67% versus 34% of the national average. So it's definitely a lot more of a tech-savvy population who are willing to do a lot more with mobile. So we've talked a lot about mobile, and now I want to talk some about responsive design. About 15% of traffic to a nonprofit's website comes from mobile, and so it's really important that we start adapting our websites to mobile devices, smartphones, and tablets, so our superheroes can actually do what we want them to, which is to take action on our issues, to make a donation to our campaigns, and to find the information that they're really looking for, and of course to be able to share our content and comment on articles. And then for the business folks in here, I thought this was an interesting stat, that in July of 2012, 4 out of U.S. smartphone users actually accessed retailer websites and apps like Amazon and eBay. Those were the top 2 that they actually accessed in July. So this is a campaign that I worked on with Craig Newmark, who's the founder of Craigslist, which everybody I'm sure knows. And he also has a philanthropic project that some of you may not know about called Craig Connects. So Craig is spending the next 20 years of his life devoted to philanthropy, and that is what we work with him on. So during the Hurricane Sandy, Craig and I were talking literally in the middle of the hurricane, and we're like, well, what can we do? We know that this is going to be so disastrous to all of the places that are being hit on the East Coast. What can we do to actually raise money really quickly for relief organizations? So we called up our friends at CrowdRise. Are people familiar with CrowdRise at all? It's a peer-to-peer fundraising platform. It's similar to Razoo, to Causes, and so we called them up, and we're like, how can we get this campaign up and running really, really quickly? And they were able to help us literally within hours. And we launched a $25,000 matching fundraising campaign with Craig to raise money for organizations like the American Red Cross, the National Wildlife Federation, who's here with us today. And in less than 3 days, we raised $50,000 just through peer-to-peer fundraising. And interestingly, CrowdRise, who's one of the largest peer-to-peer fundraising platforms, does not have a responsive design. They haven't invested in that yet. But what they did invest in was making sure that their donation form, which is the ultimate goal, which is raising money, did have a responsive design. So my advice to you, I know there's several nonprofits here, is that when you already have an established website, going back and doing a responsive design can definitely be costly. So one of the things that you should be looking to do is to at least get all of your forms in a responsive design. So your donation forms, your sign-up forms, your take action forms, so people can actually be taking action on their mobile devices. So another big debate, particularly in our DC tech community, is mobile apps. Are they useful, or is it really just flushing $20,000 bills, $20,001 bills down the toilet? So here are some interesting stats for you. 8 out of 10 apps fail. And just to give you an example, Angry Birds failed 52 times before it actually caught on. So what is the key to success in terms of building a mobile app? Well, we have found that it's really about providing value to your target audiences. And in the nonprofit sector, that's really about providing value to our heroes. Here is an app from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. It's called the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch app, and it's been downloaded 500,000 times, which is super impressive for the nonprofit community. And here's what it does. It uses a phone's GPS to load the right regional seafood watch guide based on the user's location. And this was originally a print guide that the organization had been developing and distributing for years, and people would just kind of put it in their back pocket and they would take it to them when they traveled and to restaurants. And so this is how they adapted it online. And it enables people to search for seafood by common market name, and it allows people to be able to sort seafood rankings by best choice, good alternative, and seafood to avoid. And then it also gives you alternatives to the seafood that you should be avoiding. And it has a fish map that lets people to contribute back to the community, where they can actually tag restaurants where they found sustainable seafood, and they can also see other people's recommendations from the community. I want to talk a little bit about some social media facts that I think is worth noting. The American public spends about 25% of their time on social networks. Some people are kind of shocked at that stat because they think that social media dominates our life so much, but in the general public, it's only about 25%. In terms of the most popular sites on the website, Google, of course, number 1, YouTube, number 2, Facebook, number 3, Twitter, number 4, LinkedIn, 22, and Tumblr, 24. We also have some interesting racial demographics. 65% of YouTube users are 63%. Facebook users, Caucasian, 73%. Then the next early adopters are African American community, the Hispanic community, then the Asian community. Another thing I want to talk about is designing for distribution. So one of the keys in designing multi-channel campaigns is not only to reach our heroes, but to get them to spread our message and recruit new heroes to the movement. And that is why designing for distribution is critical. So I want to talk a little bit about the Occupy movement. So the first Occupy camp started in New York City, and people posted and reshared information about issues and actions and personal stories on Twitter and Tumblr. They live streamed video on Vimeo and shared pictures on their mobile phones. And this spurred people all over the world to want to be able to do their own Occupy movements. And so they started using Meetup.com's Meetup Everywhere feature to register solidarity events in over 1,000 cities. And in 4 months, there were over 2,800 Occupy events on the map. And then one of the last points I want to talk about is cross-channel promotion from offline to online. I think that in our community, we're always thinking about what can we do online and online. But it's important to actually always take our offline events and then think about how we can actually adapt that into an online environment and how we can get people online in these offline events. So Oxfam used QR codes for a really, really neat benefit auction they had about a year ago. They had celebrities donate very sentimental items and clothes to their auction. And when a potential buyer scanned in a QR code using their smartphone on a sales tag, a video of celebrities popped up with that celebrity's personal story behind that item for sale. So in this example that I have up on the screen, Annie Lennox is holding up a dress, and her personal story behind it is that she wore this dress at Nelson Mandela's 90th birthday party. I also want to talk about that we actually talk about this a lot in the community is failing fast. And I like to call it do it wrong quickly. And I borrowed this from my friend Paul over at Charity Water, who heads digital there. And it's about testing, tweaking, and then repeat again. I think that it's really important. We were working on an app with Hillel International, and one of the interesting things that came out of this is we really wanted to focus on one objective, and they wanted to focus on 10 objectives. After talking to a lot of focus groups, there were all of these really great ideas that people had, and their approach was like, well, let's see what sticks. Well, in the end, the client wins. So we ended up doing this app, and it was too much for the community. I mean, there was just too much for them to do. So a big takeaway from that is really just don't get lost in pleasing everyone in your target audience, and don't get lost in pleasing your funders and your staff, and just remembering that you are not your target audience. Your heroes are your target audience, or the core people that are using the product. And that is the end of my presentation. So I just wanted to thank everyone. I'm happy to take questions during our Q&A session. And also, since this is we're talking about design, RAD is always looking for new designers. So if anybody's interested, please email me at allyson@radcampaign.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Allyson. That was great. So while I am getting the next presentation set up, let me introduce our next presenter. So Glennette Clark is next. She is the owner of Smarter Experiences, which is a UX-focused event production crew. So if you guys have ever been to UX Camp DC, Mobile UX Camp, this is the brains behind the operation. So let me pull up your, oops, real quick. All right. And with that, I'll leave it to you. Is this one you can? Yes, it does.
Hello, and again, my name is Glennette Clark. Thank you for coming out today. Just to expand on my background, I have a long career in design. I am an architect, a dressmaker, a journalist, and an event producer. So you might wonder how I became an architect. I started my architecture career in elementary school when I used to design for my dream house and design for my Barbies. So I used to make scale models for them, and then throughout high school I had to design a dress, and I came up with my own creation for my Elizabethan dress, full with all the handmade buttons and all this other stuff. And then I decided that I was going to go to college and study journalism. And then after that, I said, okay, I'm going to design. And so now here I am as a producer for UX Camp, and Mobile UX Camp, which focuses on user experience professionals. Let's see. So what I'm going to talk about, there you go. So, again, Steve Jobs, I consider one of the greatest designers ever. And one of the things that he talked most about was using design and how it makes you, not just how it looks, but really how it works. And to add something to that, it's also how it makes you feel. How does design make you feel when you walk into an audience? How did this space today that you're in make you feel? How does it work? I see a lot of people with iPads and iPhones and laptops, and I'm thinking, as I was sitting looking, I wonder if the designers of this space took that into consideration, that people would be using this space not just for watching a performance, but for actually taking notes and listening to other things. So in terms of context and location, those are some of the things that you want to take into consideration too, like how people are going to use the design, the space that they're going to use your design in, and so forth. Oh, wrong one. So this is the space that we used for the very first UX camp. And the reason why this space was chosen is because it was a school that focused on architecture, art and architecture as a way of teaching. So all of the lessons in the class in the elementary school were taught by architects, authors, photographers, many people in the design community. So the space was really designed for creativity and sparking creativity. So I thought that it's a great space to start off UX camp. And again, going back to space and my love for architecture, and looking at it as really a design element, not just some place that you come and look around and you sit down, but just really as a design element to look at how people will be interacting within that space. This actually is a photograph of a space that was designed for the deaf and the hard of hearing at Gallaudet. So they really focused a lot on how people would interact with that disability, how they would interact with that space, the lines and the curves, how the sound would bounce off of that space. So they really put a lot of thought into the design and how it was going to be used in the context of the deaf and the hard of hearing. So going back to what is design. So right now we're in Digital Capital Week. So we're really looking at design in two places. We're looking at design from the aspect of technology and figuring out how we can use technology in human spaces and how technology affects our lives, not just the gadgets that we play with, but everything and how we use that. So that's where we are now, and we're balancing in between those two worlds. One of my favorite apps is Park Mobile, and I think that they really nailed it in terms of location, design, and space. What happened? So for anyone who has a car, did I do something?
I don't think you did anything.
Did I move it?
Let's just try doing. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, that's also what I'm thinking.
No. Kids. I only have a few more slides to go, but I can still talk. So, in thinking about Park Mobile, one of the things I love about Park Mobile is it's really easy to set up. It's really easy to use. I can use it with one hand. I can use it with one hand. I can use it in the cold. I can use it in the heat because I take it out, put it in my zone, and I'm done. Parking paid for, don't have to fumble around with change, and it looks good, and it's really functional, and I can do it in 2 steps. 2 steps that I'm done. Because you can't see this next slide. The next slide says, designs of purely arbitrary nature cannot be expected to last long. And that quote is by Kenzo Tang, who is an architect. And it's really important that if you have an app, make sure you have a problem to solve. It's okay, even if you have an app or a website, just make sure that you have a problem to solve and you're solving, and people can use it, or people even want to use it. I know part of the part of some of the design considerations, people always criticize Steve Jobs because he didn't go to the users and he didn't go to the people to say, well, what do you want? How can we design a product for you? Well, and he didn't do that. He came up with a solution to solve our problem. He came up with a solution to allow us to take notes in a small environment without having to lug around laptops. And there we have the iPad. So if you could see my next slide, you would see a logo of Wave. Who remembers Google Wave? Yeah. Again, design with a purpose. And it's gone now. It's retired because it was a product that was designed without a purpose, and there was no problem that it was designed to solve. It was a product without a problem. So again, going back to design and the purpose of the design, mainly the purpose of design. Oh, okay. Purpose of design is to solve a problem, and a lot of the problems, some of the problems, the problem of user experience. Okay, great, thank you. There it is, Wave. Product, no problem. No problem to solve. And that is the end of my presentation. Again, my name is Glennette Clark. I am at Glennette, and that's my number if you need to call me. So, thanks.
All right, thanks, Glennette. Sorry about those technical difficulties. I think we're sorted now. That was great. We have one more for you guys, and this one is going to be from a kind of developing crisis as it happens perspective. And so our next speaker, is Danielle, the manager of social media from the National Wildlife Foundation, and she is going to talk about dealing with crisis as it happens through social media channels. Oops.
Not a designer,
You are good to go.
as you can probably tell from my PowerPoint creation. Hi, I'm Danielle Brigida. I work with the National Wildlife Federation. I definitely recognize some of you here. If you know me, you know that I'm a kind of a social media geek and less of a design geek. But I do see that that everything leads to design. And I think if organizations can actually invest more, whether you're a company or a nonprofit, invest more in designing with context, you're going to see greater return. So I'm talking about actually the oil spill crisis, which happened a few years ago. And so it seems kind of a long time ago. But when Allyson asked me if I could talk about really responding to a crisis with design, for multiple channel platforms, the first thing that came to mind is typically this crisis, because it happened very quickly. We've gotten a lot better since then at responding to things and kind of thinking in terms of, what channels people are coming to us from. But back in 2010, it was something that was very new to us, and it wasn't so much that we were really smart and thought ahead of all the different channels people could respond to us with, but just started coming to us from all these social platforms, mobile, things like that. So we had to respond and almost react. So just a quick timeline, 2010, April 20th, that's when the spill happened. We kept track of it from that day because we actually have a lot of people down in the Gulf, but we didn't know the impact that it was having on the environment yet. We didn't know about wildlife and how it was affecting them yet. So we just kind of kept an eye on it for a few days, and actually over 10 days. And it was at April 30th that we really picked up and were like, okay, we have to move on this because at that point, there was so much oil in the Gulf, and we were kind of freaking out already because I'm not sure how much you guys know about this, but it's kind of a big issue. If you we work in the Mississippi River Delta, and they lose about an acre, like a minute or something ridiculous, to the flooding and to some of the levees out there. So it's a little bit of a dire situation for wildlife in particular. But for us, I do social media. My main goal was very different than the person who runs the website, than the person who runs our direct mail campaign. And so what we really wanted to do was come up with like a few quick things to get people involved and actually get them to help. And so from a design context, it's really hard to sometimes switch from online to offline work, as we were talking about. And we really wanted to give them a mobile option, which we hadn't done before. So we needed a mobile giving code. We needed, fresh, real, up-to-date content. And we also really wanted to start involving more people to spread the message. And so one of our major jobs early on was actually getting reporters to the scenes where there was oil and the impacts of it. So yeah, our goal was to help wildlife with context and to design around that. And so we were getting a ton of images, trying to collect those, figuring out what platforms they should go on. We definitely wanted to reach new people, but there were also a lot of new people reaching out to us. And so in social media, I kind of define the ways you interact and the reasons to be on there as with the fire, the flood, and the earth, which is weird. But the earth is just like the general maintenance, like getting to know people. The fires are when people are really pissed off at you. It's good to be on social for that. But then the flood is when everyone wants to get involved and you need to figure out how to engage with them. So that was kind of what we were trying to do, is we were trying to take in all this stuff as well as use it to help wildlife even more. So, these are just some of the ways we were attacking it. We wanted to apply consistent messaging. We had a lot of people down in the field, like I was saying, or, actively reporting on things, but it was really hard. They didn't have an internet connection set up. I mean, there were certain things that just got in our way. But I think having that consistent messaging was a really good lesson for us as an organization, because we realized, wow, so many people want to give through their mobile phone, or so many people want to come to Facebook and join our cause. And it was all about giving them an experience that was consistent but also unique to the channel they were on. And that kind of contradicts itself. But anyway, I don't typically do slides like this, but it was so much information. I'm actually against this, just as a design thing. So you can, I'll slow down for this, but I don't also believe in reading slides, even though, I don't know, in this case, it's probably too small. Maybe you can see it. But the point was, we really wanted, we kind of had this issue with mobile. There's the text to give campaigns where they give a small amount. It takes time to get that money. It's very tedious to set that up. It's gotten better. But it was one of those things where, well, do we send them, when we're online, do we send them to a text number, or do we send them to, a Facebook or even just our regular donation form? And back then, we actually hadn't really optimized our donation forms for mobile. So we were getting a lot of mobile donations for some reason at night on other channels, like on Causes or on CrowdRise. I think there were a few. And so it was interesting that we weren't really ready to set things up. And because we weren't ready, people just went somewhere else. And I think when you're designing things, you've got to think ahead. And we don't always do that very well, even though I love us. But the point is, getting the situation out. We also worked with Crisis Commons to create a mobile app because we trained 250 volunteers on the Gulf to actually watch for wildlife. And then what we did with that information, we really hounded BP and like the wildlife hotlines down there so that they knew that there were all these issues going on. And if we hadn't, designed a mobile app, and it was really specific to what we needed, it wasn't for like you and me to just hang out and play Angry Birds and then switch to the oil spill responder app. No. It was really all about saving wildlife. But this is just like a quick overview. So we kind of combined all our efforts. We sent a number of emails about the situation. We obviously used mobile, both as a tool to inform the hotlines about the wildlife impacts, and then also as a way to get out the word and spread the news. I saw my job as really just to make sure the media continued to cover it, because on social media, you're talking to reporters, you're getting things out. And that plays a different role than, trying to design a mobile app for volunteers. So when you're thinking about the stuff you're creating, definitely think about the use and kind of how it can be made easier. Because sometimes the most beautiful thing is not actually the most helpful, and vice versa. We also did a direct mail, and we did quite a few videos that were sent around and offered as resources. But again, the whole point was really just this is what Facebook looked like back then. And one of the interesting things was that we had a ton of people coming to us and just lamenting about the whole situation. And so we were really trying to be sensitive to that in our design and also not like exploit anything. Really what we wanted to do was cover the severity of the issue without coming off, absolutely like the world is ending. And so, but we were, because we created a text to give campaign and we had all these multiple channels and we were integrating them pretty well, there was an entire campaign, like Anderson Cooper talked about our text to give. It certainly wasn't as impressive as Haiti in terms of the numbers of people who were donating via text, but it was definitely huge for us and a first time. So coming up with different ways to engage with people and talk to others. That text, that was our backdrop, but the squirrel in jail is not relevant. But anyway, the whole idea for us was, okay, how can we talk to people, let that influence design, let that actually, like I do so much listening or I spend a ton of time online. I don't know if you can tell, but what I do is I listen to how people are responding, and I try and fill the need that way. So I'm not really like Steve Jobs. I really do try and kind of identify where there are opportunities. And one of the things that's been really interesting is one of our most visited pages was, how do you talk to your kids about the oil spill? Which was a page that not a lot of people think about, but we have a very wonderful kids section on our site, and it's all about, like, that's one of our biggest, I think, more effective ways we talk to people is through talking to their kids, and it was very helpful, I think, to parents who had a lot of questions. And it was through that responsive design of like, okay, what do people need right now? And they need resources. They need to know what's going on. And that was what we were trying to do as an organization. And we wanted to be very transparent. And it was difficult to be that transparent when we didn't have the best communications with the people on the ground. But we definitely did do our best in communicating that, and just talking to people. I mean, people would come to our wall and just cry, or just vent about things. And we wanted to be that space, but then we wanted to give them a place to take action too. And so some of our materials were for that. Okay, this is another slide I hate. But the point was, because we were able to effectively communicate what we do, which, to be honest, we are often confused with government. National Wildlife Federation's been around since 1936. We're a great organization. We're really confusing brand-wise. People think we're the panda, or they think we're a wrestling federation. I don't know. But I think what we were able to do with this oil spill is a good example, and it was really good for our staff to see how we all work together and design together. And there were a couple of unique opportunities that wouldn't have happened for us because we're a little bit. We're more on the geeky side rather than the cool side, which is why I work there. But I think one of the things that you can learn from this example, and even as we kind of hear about other horrible things like Sandy and just all these crises, is that if you can jump on the mobile design, or if you can jump on any kind of design with a crisis, think, definitely do your listening and definitely think about how it's going to translate if people want to go a different avenue, because that was another big issue we kind of came up with. But thanks. That's it.
Great, thanks, Danielle. So I do want to get some time for some questions from you guys, if you have some. I wanted to kick it off first and just throw out a very general question to the panel at large. Kind of a trend that I've been noticing is that, like as an engineer, I'm very interested in like the execution of these things, right? And so with the order of this presentation, I kind of saw it in a way of Allyson, you were representing kind of the strategy thinking side up front of this. Glennette, you are the design side, is almost the planning side of like how we're going to manage the strategy. And then Danielle, you're dealing with the actual execution. So then between all of those things, I mean, like where are the best starting points here, right? And like how do you kind of like, ultimately you have to sell an approach like this to the people that are going to be the people that are going to need to put it into action. So if I am a person that has a site that is a few years old, and I know that I need to be able to reach people via different avenues, like where's the best starting point for me to be able to figure out, what are the places to focus on here?
Well, one of the things that I gave a lot of information on was statistics, mobile statistics, social media statistics, where they are. I think that we deal with, so Rad Campaign, I realized I didn't introduce this in my presentation, is a full-service web agency. We provide web design, web development, as well as a lot of online marketing and social media strategy. So when we come into organizations, we are dealing with the executive directors and very high-level people who don't necessarily work in this space, and they need to be sold on how to reach people. And so they need to be sold on responsive design. They need to be sold on sometimes even just basic websites, because their websites are from like 2000. So I think it starts with educating the people who are really in charge of the money, and that they need to be able to make this investment, and showing them, besides the statistics, also showing them their competitors and what their competitors are doing in this space and how they're succeeding, and trying to come up with strategies. Okay, here's where you are now. Here's where you need to be, but obviously that's going to take time. You can't just go from A to Z. Here's what we can do in the short term in terms of building a strategy to get something, particularly if you're dealing with a crisis, crisis, to be able to get something up very quickly, to reach as many people as possible, to make it shareable, and to start fostering community.
Well, coming from a design perspective, I would say the first thing is to figure out what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So if you are a website owner and you can identify your problem as, okay, we need to get more donations. So therefore, how do we design our website or our product to encourage people to give money to our cause, to support us, because that's the problem that we're trying to solve. Even from a design perspective for just a regular company, you want to encourage people to buy your services, even regardless of whether you're an e-commerce site or just a consulting firm. You want people to buy your services. So that's the first thing to do, is to identify the problem and then come up with a solution, a design solution for it.
I definitely agree with that, actually, with what everyone was saying. I think a lot of times you think you know what you're doing with your design, but you don't necessarily go back and check it too. So like sometimes we'll say, okay, we want to create, images that people can share, and we realize that, oh, they're actually not sharing it on Facebook or Tumblr. They're actually sharing it on, I don't know, Instagram or something like that. So really changing up your strategy as it goes, as you're kind of receiving information. I don't want to say data because I heard that was a buzzword here, but yeah, as you're receiving information, just by how people are responding, you can change the design too. And I think when it comes down to it, what you want is, like, I can't tell you how many sites I get frustrated with because they're really pretty, but they're not as functional. So if you can blend function, obviously with some visual beauty, I think that's kind of where you need to go. And the other thing is, it's actually not very difficult to design, both for mobile and and the web. You just have to take a little bit of time to research it. But honestly, you can figure out how to. We just switched over like our blog and our website to mobile, and it definitely took time, and you have to be strategic about what you want to be mobile friendly. But it's not as difficult as you may think, and so I think anyone here could help you with that if you're looking for tactics too.
I have two more things that I wanted to talk about in response to your question, John. One is also about telling your story up front. What is the story that you want to convey to the people that are coming to your website, your app, whatever it is that you're creating within seconds? I don't think that enough organizations, I don't think that enough businesses are able to quickly convey what their story is. And the other thing that Danielle mentioned that I just wanted to follow up on is not being so stuck in a mindset, this is the campaign that we want to launch, or this is the app that we want to launch, is really being able to iterate and really learn from our mistakes, or maybe it wasn't a huge mistake, it was a small mistake, and then quickly changing course if something is not working. I do think that we get like so stuck in a way of doing something, or we just had this idea and we have to make it work. No, you don't have to make it work. If it's not working, it's clearly not working, and your community is not responding to it, it's time to change course. It doesn't need to be radically changing course and turning it into a completely another product or another campaign, but there's ways that you can quickly tweak it and roll it out and then see what happens from there.
Yeah, so I think it's super interesting, especially the parts about changing your strategy up as you're going. Kind of like there's been this overall theme of iteration and like steady improvement and being able to kind of like turn and pivot where you need to. I guess a question that I have around that as well is that it's not always. That's definitely something that I think that it's easy to foresee that after you've done it a few times. When you are a person that recognizes that quality needs to be present in, say a new project or a new campaign or something like that, but you may be within an organization or a context where that's not going to be as easy. It's not necessarily as easy for us to like design to a 75% level, convince somebody that that's where we need to be, because after this thing launches, we're going to be playing with it, we're going to be iterating, and we're going to be learning from it. So I think to that end, I'd love to hear if any of you guys have any practical advice for folks in positions like that, where maybe I'm in an environment that is not as nimble as I would like for it to be, and then if that is the case, what can I do to get to this point where I'm making sure that I'm reacting to the feedback that I'm getting as a result of what I'm putting out there?
I'm a big believer in Agile. I'm a Scrum Master. I do it. So I believe in the process of iteration, and I think that if you continuously work in the feedback loop and you're understanding what's going on, and in terms of design and problem solving, it's not just addressing the problems or identifying the problems of the organization, but it's also identifying the problems of the user, and that's one of the ways that you can keep everything up in the feedback loop, is to make sure you're addressing both sides of the issue.
I'm curious, was your question more from how do you deal with the organization? So if you were a consultant, how do you deal with the organization and the higher ups who are saying, no, we don't want to be iterating as fast, or because they don't want to spend more money, or what was?
I think it was from a point that was like it was something that was extended off of my first question for sure, which is that, you know, if you are at a place that is has a traditional way of starting and stopping projects, or starting and stopping new campaigns or something like that, and you're recognizing this need to be able to say, we need to be a little bit more flexible with this one. Where are the good practical places to start with that conversation, I suppose?
So a story that always comes back to in my head is actually with Coca-Cola. When they initially were getting called Coke, they hated it, and then eventually they adapted. They adopted that. For us, I use the example of the oil spill, which does not happen every day. Most days, you don't have that overwhelming amount of data to work with. But what happened then was that people would submit videos or things they designed for us, and that gave us an opportunity to test them out. So I think encouraging testing, but having an end date is really helpful when it comes to trying things out. Because what happens is, if you say, okay, we're going to pivot it this way, but you have no end goal, then people freak out and they're like, no, this is our campaign. So I think if you have that, if you can convince the flexibility, but with if we don't have significant data by here, then we're not going to do it. Or if so many people haven't done what we thought they would want to do with this. And that's kind of how I would suggest it happen, because that's how I've convinced people to try things out at NWF. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Some things take a lot more time than you're given, but it's the little victories and the little pivots that sometimes make a huge difference.
I also just want to say, I also think it's really important to get buy-in from the higher ups that this is going to be part of our process, this flexibility, because I agree with you. We need that flexibility, even though we are dealing with a variety of different projects and competing deadlines. If it doesn't come from the top that this is okay to do, this is okay that we have a flexible environment, and then everybody else feeling that, because sometimes I feel like we're always yeah, fail fast, and then you're you fail, and you're shit, we failed, and people actually get punished for it, so they don't really believe it. So if it comes from a core central of people who are running the company, or just have a huge stake in the company, that this is our philosophy, we are going to be flexible, and you're not going to get punished for it. I think that's huge.
Yeah, sure. Great. Thank you, guys. So I think we have maybe a little bit of time. No time? I think of one. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming, and we really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a great DC week from here on out. And yeah, go for it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.